Chapter 24. Truth and Consequences. In the 8 years Jordan had spent in Tylersville, he had heard the emergency sirens maybe a handful of times for testing. Not once had they been used as a response to danger. Margot had burst into his room just as they sounded. Whatever look she entered with was replaced by breathless terror. They looked at each other in shock for what must have been a minute before the television in Jordan's room turned itself on. Standing behind a media podium was the Prime Minister, a harrowing look on his face as he stared dead into the camera. "Residents of Tylersville and fellow members of the company," he began. "Less than 30 minutes ago, we received word that the city of Zubrów in Poland was attacked and destroyed. While details of this attack are still unclear, we understand that a close-range missile was used. We believe the origins of the missile come from within the country of Poland itself. We understand this news is frightening. To our resident members with relatives in Zubrów, you know that the city was already evacuated of its American citizens following a failed assassination attempt on the president in the fall. To others with family in the city, it is with a heavy heart that I share that things do not look hopeful. By our most promising estimations, 80% of the population is gone, with the remainder suffering the physical and mental repercussions of such an attack, and will for years to come. The city is destroyed. It is our understanding that the Deputy Prime Minister and a number of cabinet officials have made it to safety in Germany with the other evacuees, but the Prime Minister is dead. To those of you searching for answers about relatives and friends, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will be open 24 hours every day for the next several weeks to assist you. We understand the horrific situation that surrounds a great number of you, and want you to know that help is available in any capacity we can manage. This situation is unprecedented. If our inclinations about the source of this attack are true, then our very livelihoods may be at stake, of revealed to the rest of the world for the first time since 1975. Like Craig Tyler and so many others who gave their lives in service to keeping you safe from those wishing to do you harm, we at the embassies around the world are doing everything in our power to protect you and maintain your security in these tense times. I want to stress that your personal freedoms will not be obstructed as we make temporary alterations to prevent further danger. In accordance with the Citizens' Privacy Charter, the increased security you may see in and around the city will not include any kind of surveillance of your personal affairs or records of your comings and goings. However, be aware that entering the city may be more difficult than it was before. We do have reason to believe Zubrów was put in danger by persons with intimate knowledge of the program itself, so any suspicious activity or knowledge about questionable interactions between members of the company and those on the outside should come forward immediately to share that information with the Ministry of the Constitution. You remain welcome to come and go from the city as you please, but we urge you to use extreme caution with those you speak to, especially around the external media. Again, we understand how terrifying this news is, not only for our residents from Europe, but all within the company who trust in us to keep you safe. It is during these trying times that we encourage compassion and empathy within our community. If you see someone you know struggling, provide them a hand, or direct them to the help that's available through the Ministry of Health. Please pray for our brothers and sisters from the Polish branch, that their families may be safely reunited or put at peace in this horrific tragedy. More information will be made available to you as it comes to us. Do not panic. Stay calm and stay prayerful. Our greatest strength lies within ourselves. May God protect you." The screen went black. Somewhere during the broadcast, the sirens had fallen away. Margot turned back to Jordan. Her mouth dropped. "Turn on the news," he wavered. Sure enough, CNN had helicopters circling the charred remains of a flattened city. The headline, "Nuclear Accident Destroys Polish Military Base," rolled across the screen, followed by "Thousands Believed Dead." "Oh God," he felt himself mutter. "We did that." "Stop it," Margot growled, shooting around to face him again. "It's true, though," he stood, pushing Margot aside to point at the screen. 20,000 people are dead because of us. We can blame Andrew way more than we can blame ourselves," Margot stated. "We were sabotaged." "Yeah, and you don't think Andrew was too?" Jordan screamed, unloading a detail he'd been stuck over for months. "You think the best squad in the company was tripped up by a silent alarm? One that they knew about ahead of time? Stop it," Margot repeated. "Now you're the one that sounds like Emma." "Emma believes the Russians killed JFK," Jordan fired. "I'm talking about shit that actually matters, Margot. You think it's a coincidence both of Garen's kids were involved in this? Are you really going to suggest Bill Garen is trying to start World War III? Of course not," he threw aside. "I'm just saying, if I were Riley, I'd watch myself." Margot's face turned red. "What does Riley have to do with it?" Jordan threw his hands over, shocked she still wasn't following. "Someone is targeting his kids, Mar," he voiced. "I don't know if that includes you, but we were already a part of things going wrong." She looked at him apprehensively, not saying a word. "I bet it's Daniels," he continued. "I mean, you saw the way Garen threatened him. He has to suspect something. Enough with your conspiracies," she shouted. "First it's clones, now it's a coup of the embassy. I mean, honestly, Jordan, where does it end for you?" He approached her insistently. It ends when we stop being connected to all these effing coincidences. It ends when my mom and my brother are home safe. Margot struggled to hide a laugh, her eyes staring at the concrete floor of his bedroom. And you might be right about Daniels, she conceded. Because I think Johnny's involved too. Her words hit him like an invisible train. What? He mumbled, stunned. You want to blame anybody for this? Blame Johnny, she explained. That's what Kent was going to tell you. Johnny sabotaged the mission. Our second train succeeded the first. If you say that to me again, ever, then we are done. Do you understand me? An unexpected look of panic crossed her face. Margot grabbed at his hands in desperation. No, Jordy, please, let me explain, she hurried. They have something on Johnny. That's why there's the bounty on him. Jordan struggled to give his thoughts a voice. No, he staggered. No, he would never. There's something in the audio feed that gives them reason to suspect foul play, she detailed. Kent confirmed their suspicions. Richmond brainwashed him, he exploded. You heard Emma. Kent lied about his testimony. And now they're using Johnny as some kind of scapegoat. Kent didn't lie, Margot insisted. She paused, catching herself on something Jordan was certain to be incriminating. He what? He interjected. Tell me how any of this could happen without someone in the squad flipping the switch. I mean, his dad is Dalton Hawk, for God's sake. You don't think someone like him would want to take down Garin? Or Chervinsky, for that matter? That seems like something right up Hawk's alley. Is it Garin or Poland? Margot raised. If you're going to pick a narrative, at least stick with one. Why can't it be both? Jordan realized aloud. Knock two right-wing birds out of the sky with one stone. And for what purpose, huh? She pleaded, a look of desperation crossing her face. For Shane to step in and take their place? Or Mike Richmond? Honestly, do you ever hear yourself talk? They're all the same people. The same policies in different bodies. You think Kent would participate in some massive plot to replace one conservative with another? How am I supposed to know? Jordan shouted, feeling himself grow angrier by the minute. What's stopping him? He already got my brother out of the way so he could get with Emma. Stop it, Margot said yet again. I already told you to drop that. You can blame Emma all you want, but Kent is not the problem. And how do you know that? He screamed, throwing her hands off his own to cross them. Margot stood still in contemplation, face redder than he'd ever seen. I just know. You just know, he repeated, staring into her bloodshot blue eyes. There was a desperation for him to trust her. She gave no nod of encouragement, but remained still, waiting for him to listen. What did she say to you? He finally asked, taking a breath to calm himself. Margot bit back a smile. Before or after I hit her? Jordan felt his eyebrows narrow. Why'd you hit her? Because she's the one that's been forcing him to do her dirty work, Margot explained. That's why Xander was pissed in the first place. She detailed their conversation alone in the common room just moments before. Emma playing Xander against Kent to protect her father from the Granhook lawsuit, manipulating Kent's feelings to trust her. Jordan sighed and sat down on the edge of his bed. I don't blame you, he warded. If anything, she had it coming. Thanks, Margot blushed. So you think she's behind all this? Emma Garin orchestrating World War III? She scoffed. Of course not. Okay, then what's actually going on? Jordan wondered. I don't know, Margot conceded. But I think Emma's a manipulative jackass who doesn't know how to keep her mouth shut. If I go the next 3 months without talking to her, then all the better. I've had enough of the Garins. When the year's over, we're leaving. Jordan sat up straighter. Who, both of us? Well, I'm not leaving without you, she argued. I thought that was the deal. He looked into her eyes, still red with nervous tears. I'm never leaving you, he recited, standing to pull her into a tight hug. A loud banging on the door interrupted the embrace. Open up! An unfamiliar voice boomed on the other side. Both of you, out here, now! Jordan looked at Margot cautiously before crossing to the door. A uniformed guard was standing just outside the frame. 2 more waited behind him in the common room. Margot glared at Emma, who stood next to the couch, her face red and swollen from where Margot had obviously made contact. You called the cops? She screamed. We're not cops, the guard denied. And we're here for all 4 of you. What? Jordan joined her, before noticing Kent standing on his crutches next to the front door. Embassy orders, the guard continued. We're escorting all 4 of you to the training center. Mr. Schuler will explain everything when we get there. Margot voiced Jordan's confusion. Schuler? What about my dad? Emma squeaked, earning another perforating glare. It's not my place to say, ma'am, the guard added. But I think your father might have a bigger issue on his hands. Emma turned a remorseful look at Jordan before blushing away, following the first 2 guards and Kent outside into the hallway. A 4th guard carrying a full rifle stood sentry by the door, now following them into the elevator and to a car pulled all the way onto the sidewalk. None of them spoke during their short drive down the street, pulling into the back loading bay of the training center. The guards pulled them out of the vehicle one by one before leading them around the training floor and into the dressing room. An additional guard stood inside the room alongside a furiously stoic Xander and Tate Schuler, still wearing his same suit from that afternoon, now drenched in sweat and flakes of dry skin. When the door closed and only one guard remained, Schuler opened his mouth to speak. "Long time no see," he joked, flashing an expressionless smile before returning to seriousness. "I come assuming you all saw the announcement." "Where's my dad?" Emma chirped. Everyone in the room shot their heads in her direction. Xander blurted, "Emma, I swear to God, if you don't shut your mouth right now, I'll sew it that way myself." Schuler cleared his throat to reposition their attention. He removed his shell glasses, wiping the mask of his position away and showing genuine exhaustion on his shrewish face. "Look, it's been a stressful day," he begged. "Miss Guerin, your father is dealing with an unprecedented situation. You need to grant him the autonomy to deal with that first." He turned to the rest of them as Emma shrunk in her skin. "As such, the fallout of your involvement specifically is falling under my jurisdiction, however linked they might be," he went on. "On orders of the embassy, none of you are to leave Tylersville for any reason. Is that clear?" An outburst of disbelief echoed throughout the room. The loudest voice was Xander's, who shouted, "But Guerin just said—" "I know what he said," Schuler raised, standing his ground. The rest of them fell silent. "No one else in the city was involved in an attack on a foreign nation. All 5 of you are in unfathomable danger if you move past the fence. Do you understand that? That man just bombed 30,000 of his own people just to make a point. What makes you think he won't send assassins to hunt you down in Denver?" A grim silence fell over them, understanding his warning. "To answer your next question, no. We don't know how long it's going to last. We're anticipating potential Civil War-level retaliation from the Polish left if our intelligence is correct, so hopefully it's not more than a few months before we can lift that security. But until then, you're to follow these guidelines for your own safety, regardless of how totalitarian they might appear." He looked around the circle, waiting for someone to speak. Xander went first. "My wife is due in July, and God forbid we have to keep you under lock and key until then. Your in-laws will be permitted to visit and stay as long as necessary, so long as they pass our security checks." Jordan looked over at Emma, who appeared to be suffocating on unspoken thoughts. Schuler noticed. "As for your brother and Hadiat," he went on, "he's been given the same protection." "Well, what about my brother?" The words came out of Jordan's mouth faster than he could stop them. Schuler glanced over with his exhausted expression. "You're ahead of me again," he sighed. "It's come to our attention that Johnny Sparks may have disobeyed orders during the mission plan for personal gain. As such, the company has declared an open capture bounty to return him for questioning over his actions." Jordan felt himself step forward. "That's bullshit! Jordy!" Both Margot and Xander stepped in to hold him back. "Well, he was set up!" "Regardless of what the truth might be," Schuler continued, holding up a hand to caution the others, "an open capture means no lethal force. I personally side with the rest of you. I don't believe this is something he would have done of his own accord. Nonetheless, the company will find him and bring him in for questioning so we can sort all this out." "Shane Daniels!" Jordan shouted, remaining still but struggling to maintain his frustration. "I guarantee he had something to do with this." The others froze. Even Schuler appeared taken aback by the idea. "Mr. Delarue, that is a very serious accusation," he shouldered, frowning. "What you're suggesting implicates a conspiracy." "Why not?" Jordan continued, knowing Margot was again reaching for him to stop. "We know we were sabotaged by company members. Why couldn't it have been Shane who sent them?" "Because Shane is the deputy prime minister." Every eye turned to Xander, whose voice cut through harder than he expected. Jordan grit his teeth, turning to the man he thought he trusted. "And why do you care?" he frowned. "I thought you hated the Guerins. I thought you hated this whole administration." If Xander was embarrassed by the accusation, he didn't let it show. "Because I know Shane Daniels," he deflected, turning to Schuler. "So does Tate. And Shane would never backhand the company like that." "How do you know?" Jordan wanted to shout, but before he could, Emma's voice bounced across the room. "I think Jordan's right," she said. Both Schuler and Xander raised their voices to silence her, but she continued. "Please," she begged to be heard. "Johnny met privately with Shane before we went to China." No one else found this odd, but Jordan could tell by Emma's tone that something was off about it. "Johnny and Shane met several times before China," Schuler noted. "Shane was mentoring him." "This was different," Emma rallied. "It was the middle of the night, and when Johnny came back, I could tell something was off. Even when we got to China, it's like he knew something bad was going to happen." "Shane tipped him off," Jordan pieced together. "I knew it! Shane's behind all of it. He was in Poland during the assassination too, wasn't he?" Jordan turned back to Schuler, expecting some kind of acknowledgement. Instead, he was met with a wall. "Enough!" Schuler yelled, raising his voice for the first time. He shot glances back and forth between Jordan and Emma, before ordering, "You two, Out! He pointed between Margot and Kent, who looked incredulous. No, Margot huffed. Whatever you're saying to them, we're allowed to hear it too. I said out, he demanded. And following Kent's awkward hobble through the door, Margot shot a definitively furious look at both Schuler and Jordan before the door was closed behind her. Sit down, Schuler growled. Both of you, now. Emma and Jordan did as they were told. Your baseless accusations need to end. They're not, Emma began, but shriveled in terror at the look given by Xander. Schuler cleared his throat. They are baseless accusations, he doubled. You assume so little of the embassy that you think we didn't vet everyone in the building over their connection to this already? Jordan looked at Emma, but she remained silent and terrified. You just openly accused a ministry high official of treason, Schuler added grimly. In the eyes of multiple witnesses. By law, I have to open a full investigation into the matter. Good, Jordan thought, but Schuler's expression kept him frozen too. When the investigation concludes and provides nothing new to what the embassy already concluded independently, you will have wasted numerous valuable company resources during a time that a completely separate crisis is spreading the embassy paper thin. And we will be no closer to finding Johnny or figuring out the truth. You will become the boy and the girl who cried wolf, and if something ever happens where you actually come forward with a meaningful accusation of misconduct, no one will ever believe you again. He shot his eyes between the two. Is that clear? Jordan looked to Xander for help, but his eyes were more rageful than the minister's. Is that understood? Xander raised, echoing Schuler's sentiments. Yes, sir, they both squeaked, Emma turning to Jordan with genuine dread. Then you're dismissed, Schuler waved. Tell the others you'll be informed of any security updates as the situation emerges. The door guard ushered them out through the classroom and into the hall. Kent and Margot were waiting with another pair of armed security. As soon as they were out of earshot of the classroom door, Jordan turned to Emma. I'm not stopping, he whispered. Jordan, she shuddered. You heard. If you think a threat is going to stop me from... Someone yanked his arm nearly out of his socket, stopping him mid-sentence. He turned to find Margot gripping his wrist with both hands, a menacing glare shooting into his eyes. Don't talk to her, she scolded, loud enough for Emma to hear before pulling him well ahead of the other two. Mar, he breathed, trying to keep up. What are you... You don't talk to her, she repeated. Ever. Got that? Margot, are you crazy? She knows what she did, Margot scorned, shooting another death glare back over her shoulders. You're not allowed to talk to her, is that clear? She is not your friend, Margot roared. She is responsible for all of this, got it? Jordan looked back at Emma, who looked as shocked as he felt. Margot, do you understand me? She screamed, pulling him back to face forward. Confused and terrified by her tone, he mumbled, Yes, fine. Margot was unwaveringly serious about Emma. After an awkward Friday night, the security threat was lifted enough to allow them to wander freely again around the city without escort. For the first time in his life, Jordan was tempted to go to church Sunday morning, but upon crawling out of bed and starting to dress himself, Margot's delivery of the words, Where do you think you're going? Frightened him back to her side. Emma was quick to learn how serious Margot was, too. After 2 brief confrontations in the kitchen Monday, Margot's ability to sway even Kent to her cause left Emma without friends in the squad, and as soon as Margot entered the common room the rest of the week, Emma was quick to run off through either door. The atmosphere of the school had shifted that week, too. The flags of Poland and its 3 subject states had been hung over the 3rd-floor balcony in the cafeteria as a show of solidarity. Initially, this proved to be a choice in poor taste, as within 3 days the Polish flag had been ripped from its hangings no less than 7 separate times, ending up in a garbage can, torn in several pieces, and once found in one of the used toilets. By Thursday, the administration had enough common sense to remove the flags and replace them with a handmade sign reading, Pray for our Polish brothers and sisters, which seemed to signal emotions in the right direction. Most of the Polish exchange students had traveled to Beer Garden for information on missing relatives, but the few who had remained were obviously shaken. The company had awarded any Polish citizens living in Tylersville immediate membership by request, as without a hub city to return to, their citizenship within the company was transferred to Germany. There was a Hungarian boy in their history class who had lost both of his parents, along with all 4 of his siblings, who had completely stopped talking to anyone in class. Jordan had never seen someone look so hopeless. Thursday night, his dreams were plagued by visions of China. After night of nightmares putting himself in Poland, China was a welcome change. But once his eyes flashed open Friday morning, he was less concerned with seeing himself in the stairway again, and more concerned that his fear and regret were starting to fade. If anything, the dreams were pulling him back there, longing to have a gun back in his hand. To Jordan's horror, he found himself empathizing with his mother. That afternoon, Jordan nearly fell asleep in biology. He had expected to feel more awake after a more complete sleep, but 2 weeks of sleeplessness had changed how his body functioned. Overslept and overtired, Kelster called on him on a question regarding dominant traits, to which Margot shook him awake and Jordan found himself the center of a laughing classroom. Kelster hardly seemed to notice, moving on to someone else and continuing his lecture until the bell sounded at the end of class. As they were leaving, Kelster called his name. "Mr. De La Rue?" he croaked. "A word, please." Jordan swallowed and ushered Margot onto her next class, leaving with a dissatisfied grunt. "Yes, sir?" He approached the front desk. Once the other students had exited, Kelster's expression softened. "So, I spoke to a colleague of mine up at JHF about your question last week," he began. Jordan was briefly taken aback, expecting a reprimand for his nap. Kelster just went on, an almost eager tone in his voice. "As far as either of us has been able to find, the company has no record of such an effect existing. The closest thing we could find was a mental effect found a few times in Europe, where a person was able to manipulate others into hallucinating things that weren't there." Jordan frowned, remembering their previous conversation. "That's not it, sir," he relayed. "All the copies would have disappeared once the source was killed, wouldn't they?" "Hypothetically, yes," Kelster agreed. "No one can be in two places at once, nor can anyone create matter that isn't already there." "What about fire elementalists?" Jordan raised. "Good question," Kelster continued. "But still the same laws. Take your friend Miss Granhook, for example. She could transform the energy around her and use it to her advantage, but you can't create something out of nothing. It goes against the universal laws of matter." Jordan sighed, disappointed. "So they're not duplicates?" he breathed rhetorically. There's a gleam in Kelster's eye. "Well, it depends what you qualify as a duplicate," he went on. "In the sense of your question about it being an effect, no. At least not as far as the company has ever seen before. But you previously brought up the theory about cloning." Kelster's tone indicated he was onto something. "And?" "And based on your descriptions of those involved, and the concerns Miss Drea raised in your conversation, we're left with several very large coincidences, all of which must point to some truth." Jordan's heart was racing. "Such as?" "Well, you told me before that they were all the exact same shape and size," Kelster voiced. "I'm assuming this is something you learned through your effect." "Yes, sir." "Which would account for why none of the others would notice the similarities in the individuals the way you did," he continued. "The question is, why?" Jordan eyed him cautiously. "Why what?" "Why'd they look different in the first place?" Jordan raised his good eyebrow. "What does that mean?" Kelster put his hand on his desk. "You see the world differently than everyone else," he noted, continuing before Jordan could answer. "The question is, why, if multiple individuals with the exact same shape and size were created together and put in the same situation, were they then made to look different?" It took Jordan several moments to piece together an answer. When he had one, he worded it uncertainly. "To hide something?" Kelster smiled. "Perhaps," he chided. "If I were successful in creating a batch of clones, and I didn't want the world to know, for whatever reason that might be, I may attempt to hide the success to avoid suspicion. It would be as easy as changing an eye color or breaking a nose." He gestured to Jordan's face. "Adding a scar. The rest of the world would be too distracted by the surface level differences to realize the truth, unless someone like you were to see things as they are." Jordan's heart continued to race. "So you believe me then?" Kelster's smile faded. "Son, I wasn't there," he diffused. "The evidence lies with you and your squad alone, and if they don't believe you, then you're the only evidence there is." "Well, screw the evidence," he shouted. "That doesn't mean it's not true." Jordan stepped back, realizing what he had just said to the face of a science teacher. Kelster's eyes had an odd expression. "You're laughing at me," Jordan groaned. "I'm not." "You are," he raged. "You're just feeding my ego. And if I had more, I would let you feast," Kelster admitted. "Do I believe your theories about cloning?" He shook his head. "I don't know. But I do know that you saw something you don't understand, and you want answers because it's important to you." Jordan shook his head in return. "This whole time I thought you were helping me find something." "I told you what I've found," Kelster claimed. "Beyond the fact that human cloning still remains incredibly illegal, along with still scientifically impossible by all known resources, I've given you everything I know about the facts of your theories." Jordan felt his face redden. "So why even let me believe it in the first place?" Kelster's response was interrupted by the school bell, signaling Jordan late for language. He turned to his desk to begin writing an excuse note. With his back turned, he concluded, "Because faith is the motivation for finding truth." Then he sent Jordan on his way. McLeish was used to his tardiness, but Margot rolled her eyes when Jordan sat down in language. His mind stayed behind in the science wing through the entirety of the class. Even in training, where Xander was concluding a week-long focus on sniper rifles, Jordan couldn't stop thinking about what Kelster had said about scars. With 15 of 100 multi-range targets, he was easily the worst in the squad, and he heard an earful from Xander after it about focusing. The three of them trudged back to the common room together, taking Kent's pace and remaining well behind Emma, who rushed off ahead of them. When they reached the kitchen, she was already swiftly past, slamming the door to her bedroom. Jordan stared a moment too long at it once they'd slipped off their shoes. "Stop feeling bad for her," Margot scolded, catching his glance. Jordan struggled to hide his eyes rolling. "Why do you feel bad for her?" she continued. "She deserves it." He'd had enough of her attitude for the day. Seeing Kent take a seat in the living room, he switched to French. "You're being an asshole," he breathed. Margot was taken aback. "Excuse me?" she repeated. "I'm being an asshole?" She stormed around the island and ripped open the cabinet below the sink, pulling out various bottles of liquor hidden behind cleaning supplies. "Is this being an asshole?" She screwed the tops off the bottles and poured them all down the drain, the entire time glaring at Jordan over the counter. "Yes," he huffed. "It is." She put the tops back on and returned the bottles to their place below the sink. "Good," she shrugged, her eyes bulging. "I'll keep doing it then. Margot, what'd you have to say to Kelster, huh?" she went on. "You still up in arms about your whole clone theory even after I told you to drop it? Since when do you dictate how I get to think? Since I became your girlfriend," she hissed. "You're obsessed, Jordan. It's eating you alive and I'm trying to keep you from going off the deep end." He pointed at the sink. "Oh, you're worried about me going off the deep end?" "She deserves it," Margot soured. "She screwed Kent, she screwed Liz, and for all we know, she probably has something to do with Johnny disappearing too." "Stop that," Jordan replied. "She would never do that." "I'm not worried about what she would or wouldn't do, Jordan," Margot stated. "I'm worried about what she did. And what she did is screw the rest of us over. She can rot for all I care." Kent had popped his head over the couch at the sound of his name. Jordan switched back to English. "What do you care?" he stormed. "That's rich," she shook her head. "You can figure that out tomorrow if you forget to put me in front of your stupid obsessions again." "What's that supposed to mean?" She stomped around to face him. "What, you forget what tomorrow is?" Jordan rolled his eyes. "Margot's pissed off on a Saturday again?" Her claws extended, scratching a mark in the granite countertop. "Seriously?" She stormed off toward the bedrooms. "No, seriously, what am I missing?" "It's frickin' Valentine's Day, Jordy," she scowled. "You know, that day you're supposed to actually focus on me for a change?" Jordan's mouth dropped disbelievingly. "You better figure out that reservation at Pantella's real quick, or otherwise the pool's closed." "Are you actually being serious?" Margot's face turned red. She spun around and slammed the door behind her into her own room. "God!" Jordan screamed, turning around to the only ears there to hear. "Really? Does she honestly expect me to care about Valentine's Day right now?" Kent turned, apparently not expecting Jordan to be talking to him. "Like, genuinely, how?" Kent shrugged. Jordan half expected some ill-prepared wisdom to come flowing into the room. Instead, Kent opened his mouth and said, "Bitches be shopping." Whatever tension Jordan held before it disappeared in an instant. He was so taken aback that he nearly collapsed onto the floor laughing. By the time he found his way to one of the living room chairs, Kent was grinning from ear to ear. "They do," Jordan agreed, still catching his breath. "Thanks, man. I needed that." Kent nodded his appreciation. "I think she needs Valentine's Day," he offered. "Two sides of the same coin." "Jeez, am I really getting relationship advice from you?" Jordan replied, not realizing the harshness of his words until they were given voice. Kent blushed, his smile fading. "Sorry," Jordan hurried. "I didn't mean... I get it. I'm not trying to be a douchebag," he continued. "It just happens sometimes." "It's been happening since I met you," Kent noted, before adding, "Don't worry, I'm used to it." Jordan felt a wave of guilt wash over him. "I'm sorry," he apologized again, struggling to rediscover his footing. "You doing anything tomorrow?" Kent knit his eyebrows. "For Valentine's Day, I mean," Jordan clarified. Again, Kent looked confused. "You're asking the guy you're embarrassed to get relationship advice from if he has plans for Valentine's Day?" "Oh, help me out here," Jordan begged. "I'm trying." Kent frowned. "No," he stated. "No plans. I'll probably just hang out and watch golf." "Ew," Jordan grimaced. "Is that all you do all day in Johnny's room?" "Hey, you said you didn't care." I don't," Jordan leveled. "I just... Ew." Kent's face turned red. "Why don't you do something with Emma?" Jordan offered. "Emma?" Kent frowned. "Why Emma? I don't know, Jordan said. I thought you liked her. She's dating your brother. It hasn't stopped you before, he bothered. Kent remained silent. Embarrassed, Jordan realized he had crossed back into douchebag territory. What about Rachel? He recovered. I thought you guys were hitting it off at her party. What, 3 months ago? Kent questioned. I haven't even seen her since then. Why not? Jordan kept on. I thought she was into you. I'm sure she'd go for it now that you're back in town. Kent shrugged, the redness in his face turning to white. I don't know, he sighed. I don't really think it was anything like that. Oh, Jordan managed. Well, what about that girl from Homecoming? Kent looked puzzled. Who? The little one, Jordan remembered. The one you danced with. She was cute. Morgan? Kent recalled, the look on his face showing he didn't agree. Liz's friend, right? Jordan pushed. Why don't you ask her? Kent looked to the ground. Initially thinking he was considering the option, Jordan quickly realized what he'd said. He took a deep breath. I'm sorry about Liz. Kent kept his eyes to the ground. Yeah? I guess I didn't really know her that well, Jordan voiced. But I know Margot's really torn up about it too. Kent looked up, his brown eyes enormous. If you ever want to talk to her about it, you know you can, right? Jordan continued, seeing a look of caution on Kent's face. Just because I'm not allowed to talk to Emma doesn't mean you can't talk to Margot. Kent shrugged. Right now? He muttered, gesturing to the door. Besides, you really think she'd want to talk to me about Liz after I threw her under the bus like that? Jordan shook his head. Stop that, he denied. Emma manipulated you into doing that. Kent smiled. All three of you treat me like I can't make my own decisions, he noted. You know I could have just said no, right? Jordan fell silent. It's like you think I'm some puppet who can't speak for myself, Kent went on. Honestly, it's obnoxious. Jordan felt his throat shrink. What are you talking about? I threw Liz under the bus, he stated bluntly. Yeah? Jordan agreed. Because Emma... No, Kent scolded. I made the decision. It's my fault. Kent, you couldn't... Oh, couldn't I? Kent raised. Like I'm just some dumb New Yorker who can't see the repercussions for my actions? Jordan swallowed hard. You're right, Kent surrendered. Emma told me what would happen whichever way I chose. And I chose the one she wanted me to, but do you really think I was incapable of knowing what would happen? I had a whole day to think about it. I made that decision. Jordan took a shaky breath. So you screwed her, he clarified. You screwed her family out of the lawsuit. For what? So Emma would like you? Kent shook his head again. That had nothing to do with it. Jordan rose to his feet. Then for the love of God, Kent, tell me, he screeched. I thought she was your friend. She was my friend, Kent agreed, rising to his own wobbly stance. She was the closest thing I'll ever have in this squad, and she's dead. So why would you... Because she's dead, Kent spat, articulating the last word with every bit of his tongue. Because it doesn't matter anymore. Doesn't matter anymore, Jordan raised. You tell that to Margot. You tell that to Liz's family. If I hadn't told them that, they would have killed me, Kent snarled. Liz gave her life to save me. You think I was just going to throw that away? So that's your excuse? Jordan huffed. Save yourself and screw everybody else? You don't get it, do you? Kent raised. You really think the Granhooks have a chance this time? What are you talking about? Jordan repeated. They've already won. Of course they have a chance. Last time it was a nobody, Kent went on. There was no one to fight against. He pointed to Emma's bedroom door. Have you seen how hard she's fighting to win? We have no chance against Bill Guerin if that's just his teenage daughter. I've seen what people like my dad do to people that get in their way, Jordan. He's not going to lose, no matter what the odds are stacked against him. Kent closed his eyes and shook his head. You think I'd really let what Liz did go to waste? Kent took a deep breath and sat back down. Jordan had no idea what to say. He stood there, shell-shocked, struggling to replay everything Kent had just said. After a minute of silence, he sat back down in the armchair, gripping the sides. So the part where you talked to Richmond about Johnny, Jordan finally worded. What's your excuse for that? Mike didn't do anything, Kent defended. Emma treats him like some kind of supervillain. He literally just played me the tape from the office. I explained to the embassy what I remembered. That was it. So you didn't screw over my brother, Jordan echoed. The embassy just made up a narrative to throw him under the bus the same day you did with Liz. You didn't hear the tape, Kent frowned. Jordan, something was going on. Yeah, he was set up, Jordan roared. Yeah, maybe he was, Kent toyed. But it was obvious that something weird was going on. And you just conveniently forgot about it until your testimony. I told you, Kent said. Traumatic disassociation. Call it whatever buzzword you want. Nobody believes you, Jordan huffed. Fine, Kent argued. But I've done nothing except tell the truth about Johnny. Screw you, Jordan grunted. Everyone knows you hate him. You had every motivation to get him into this mess. I hate him because he broke my leg, Kent admitted. I hate him because he's a hypocritical asshole. Jordan shook his head. You hate him because you don't understand him, he defended. Look, I get that. Genuinely, I do. But he's my brother. So as long as I'm here, you watch what you say about him. Kent smiled. Why? Because he's not man enough to defend himself? Because he's not here to defend himself! Again, Jordan rose to his feet, taking his anger out on the TV remote on the table. He picked it up and launched it at the wall, smashing a picture frame on the shelf into several pieces. Realizing what he'd done, he swore loudly and turned to the corner to hide his face. After a moment's pause, Kent's voice returned, far more compassionate than before. I'm sorry he's missing, he said, sitting up straighter. Expression had drained from his face. Are you? Jordan turned. For your sake, yeah, Kent apologized. I am, especially with your mom being gone too. What do you expect me to say to that? Jordan growled. Thanks? No, Kent sighed. I'm not here to empathize with you. I can't empathize with you. Then what? Jordan scowled. Are you here to laugh at me? Because that's what Margot does every time I try to make sense of anything. My brother disappears and suddenly I'm crazy for suggesting he's innocent. Everybody watches Garen and Daniels go at each other in the auditorium, but I'm some kind of nutcase for thinking I can say anything about it. I don't think you're crazy, Kent sighed. For what? He shrugged. How long have I been saying Shane and Johnny have a weird relationship? Well, then back me on it, Jordan erupted. Because anytime I suggest anything to anyone, they shut me down like I'm some kind of conspiracy theorist. Xander, Kelster, Margot. Hell, I can't even talk to Emma because of Margot. And you and Margot both have Johnny on some kind of kill list because of whatever the hell this tape in the office implies. He turned to face Kent, who was leaning forward on his knees. Do you know how trapped I feel? Jordan continued, feeling everything in his head fall out of his mouth before he could stop it. My dad is dead. Johnny's dad is dead. My mom, my brother. He could feel himself about to break. I don't know if I can do it anymore. Kent launched to his feet, almost falling over trying to balance himself on his cast. Stop it, he frowned. Don't preach to me like this is some middle school PSA, Jordan said. I'm not just saying it, I genuinely... He ran a hand through his hair and felt his breath shiver again. Margot always says how she could never live without me, he continued. She always threatens it like it's some terrible thing, like life isn't worth living if all the people you love are gone and it's... His voice shattered. They're already gone, man. Kent's eyes were even larger than before. Jordan slammed his eyes shut so he wouldn't have to see them. I mean, besides her, he choked. What's the point? I don't even want to be here anymore. He'd stopped caring long before, but Jordan finally let everything out in front of Kent. Every thought of Johnny, of his mom, fell from his eyes onto the carpet at his feet. And for the first time in weeks, he felt okay. When the tears stopped flowing, he wiped his eyes with both hands and looked back to Kent. I'm sorry, Jordan began. But before he could say more, Kent stepped up to him and hugged him. Johnny had never hugged him like that. As Kent held him upright with his arms around him, Jordan remembered the last time Frank Sparks had done the same, telling him how proud he was to call Jordan his son, before putting him to sleep. The next morning, he had disappeared at the embassy, and they never saw him again. Kent released him, but instead of sitting down on the couch, he took a step back and remained standing. He stared into Jordan's face, emotionless, and sighed. The summer I got my effect, I found my cousin Louis hanging in his bedroom. Jordan felt his chest shrink. He was 15 when it happened, Kent continued. Didn't leave a note, just came home one day and closed the door like any normal afternoon. He looked back at the shattered photograph on the floor. Funeral was a mess. He wasn't really my cousin, just another Italian boy from the neighborhood. His mom was close with my mom sort of thing, but it broke everybody. I guess one of his friends at school ended up doing the same thing a few months later. My mom was whacked before, but that really killed her. She got really possessive of me. I mean, obviously, I'm her only kid, but I mean, like, wouldn't let anybody watch me sort of thing. Cameras around the house. It never let me out of her sight when she was around. It tracked my every movement when she wasn't. It drove me insane. Kent pulled out his phone and showed a list of missed phone calls, all from the same number. She still calls me every single day, he claimed. I haven't answered since I left LaGuardia. Don't plan on answering either, but beyond her getting obsessive, I realized how messed up Louis made everyone else around me. And that day I told myself no matter how much life sucks, that's never going to be an option. Say whatever you want about my life growing up, or even how I got here. No matter how bad I feel about it, no matter how angry I get about it, I'm going to win. Kent gestured at the doors. I already know I'm disposable, he stated. Before Jordan could pitch in, he added, Emma and her dad both made that pretty clear back in China. But so long as I have a say in the matter, they won't beat me. Not my parents, not the Garens, not the thoughts in my head or the devil or whatever religious equivalent you want to add to the mix. I'm going to stay alive and I'm going to win. Jordan remained rooted to the spot, frozen in shocked silence. Kent turned carelessly toward the far wall, and before Jordan could say anything, he reached down and picked up the picture. Both the glass and the frame were utterly destroyed. Kent brushed the glass onto the floor and blew the picture clean. Grab a pen, he muttered. Jordan stayed still, unsure he had heard correctly. What? Go get a pen, Kent demanded, waving his hand casually toward the kitchen. Or a marker, it doesn't matter, just find something to write with. Jordan felt his feet move without command, finding a Sharpie hidden in one of the kitchen drawers, then making his way over to Kent. Kent handed him the picture. You're going to sign it, he said. Jordan looked down at the glossy square of paper in Kent's hand. It was the one Margot had taken of all 6 of them the night of the homecoming dance. He could still feel how tight his arms had been trapped in that maroon suit. What? You're going to sign it, Kent repeated. Jordan looked up at Kent's face. Why? Kent flipped the picture over. Because today you're going to choose whether or not you're going to win too. Jordan looked down to the blank back of the photo. I'm not making you do anything, Kent argued. You're going to choose whether the fight is worth it or not. And if you choose to win, you sign and date it and put it back on the shelf. Why? Because every day until you leave this room for the last time, you're going to see that picture and remember the time you chose to fight back. And it doesn't matter how many things just stand in your way or how many times you want to give up. You're going to be reminded of the promise you made to yourself. You're going to keep on keeping on. Jordan uncapped the marker and stared at the white canvas. His mind raced around to Johnny, to his mother, to Margot. Somehow, some way he had yet to find, he was going to bring all of them back together. That was the only way he was going to win. He took a deep, shaky breath as he signed his name. Jordan Delarue, February 13th, 2015. He stared at his own signature for at least a minute before he looked back up to Kent. Thank you, he sighed, reaching out and returning the hug Kent had motivated him with just minutes before. Don't mention it, Kent replied softly, taking the picture and setting it upright against 2 other frames. Dead friends and hitting each other aside, we're still a squad. Jordan brushed over his thoughts to Johnny. Still a squad, he agreed. Kent picked up the remote from the wreckage and turned on the TV before moving to the couch and sitting back down. What's yours? Jordan raised. What's my what? Kent replied, keeping his eyes on the screen. Your picture, Jordan added. What is it? When did you sign yours? Kent turned his head. Oh, I've never signed a picture, he grinned. That's a you thing. Jordan felt his face whiten. Before he could say anything, Kent added, Holy, look at this. He turned to the TV, which Kent had changed to the news. A massive crowd was gathered around the now too familiar Palace of Culture and Science in Warsaw. Red smoke was rising from the ground, but the attitude of the people looked cheerful, almost celebratory. A news ticker flowed across the bottom of the screen. Chervinsky flees Poland.